Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and today Justin's not going to be fully here because he's going to be looking at Cayennes that he wants to buy. But we have some vehicles that we're going to talk about. Porsche dropped the new, well, not really dropped. They dropped the track time for the GT4 RS. We'll talk about that. Genesis GV70 Motor Trend's Car of the Year. There's some leaks on the full-size Range Rover, as well as the Honda Civic Si. We got the full details of that. So let's talk about the Cayman first, the GT4 RS. So first, I'm super surprised that they're coming out with an RS model of the GT4, because as we know, Porsche doesn't want the Cayman to, cast a shadow on their precious 911. But the GT4 RS, I think it kind of will. Like, this is going to be
Yeah,
a crazy vehicle.
because the lap time that they've released has gone and done that. It's beat every 991 short of the GT3 and a GT4 RS models. The GT3 is actually slower than a GT4 RS. It beat the 918 hypercar. Now this is with a bit of prep. Obviously, there's Cup 2Rs which weren't available when the 918 came around. My question is this chassis getting a little bit old? In terms of, we've seen the GT4 now. The GT4 is now 5 years old, coming on 6 years actually. So it's been a while, and GT4 came out, halfway through the 981 generation, and so the 718 to me, even though it's a new chassis designation, to me it, as desirable as that car is, it's it's a little bit long in the tooth because you get inside and it's kind of the same interior from 2013. And so that's coming up on a decade. GT4 RS, it is the most exciting, most track focused of the Cayman street cars yet, I would say. It's got the crazy wing, it's got the crazy arrow. This one's got the bucket seats. You can take out OEM radio delete, probably even an AC delete. It didn't mention that, I don't think.
It has ducts on the window right
Instead
behind.
of the side window, which makes sense because that window is pretty useless. Having driven a GT4 before, it's that window is there, I don't know, to let in light perhaps, but you can't see out of it when you're driving really. But yeah, the time is quite impressive. The Yeah, it's up there with basically all the top supercars.
Mhm.
So yeah,
It definitely is impressive, but I just, I don't know. Like, the 911 is supposed to be their poster child, right? With this GT4 RS, I just feel like it is like they're finally allowing the Cayman to kind of knock the 911 off that podium a little bit. Like, I'm sure there's people that's still going to be buying 911s. That's, Porsche's like actual kind of like sports car, right? But the GT4 RS, like the the balance of it, the fact that it's lighter, the fact that it's fast, it really is, according to these lap times, it is knocking that 911 off that podium a little bit. And I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that Porsche's
yes.
finally letting go of their reins a little bit.
Well, and I think the thing is the 911 is now a GT car. It is a car for the masses. The Carreras, the Targas, the Turbos, these are all, you know, before when the RS was such a unicorn, and it still is a unicorn. Um, these were what everyone bought to track: C2S, C4S. These are, if you're tracking a 911, chances are that's what you bring out. But nowadays, you go to track day and it's like almost exclusively GT cars.
Mhm.
You get the occasional C2S, but there's not that many out there. Like the guys that want to track a 911, typically just get the GT3, and the GT4 RS does not really kind of overshadow that. That's why the GT4 output was always about the same as a GT. No, not a GT, a C2S, because they didn't want to surpass the normal Carrera models. But those Carrera models are now your daily driver, commuter type cars. And the interior has been upgraded so much over the last decade. Even the car is just very approachable, and I think that's kind of the direction that Carrera is moving, which is why they can let the GT4 undercut those cars in terms of performance. That's why they let you get the 718 GT4 now with the PDK. That was kind of, they always nerfed it with that manual transmission. I think the manual being infamously long for gearing, just not as competitive as it could be. Ultimately, Porsche's out there to make a name for themselves. The internal cannibalization is not, when the competition is getting stiff, when you've got cars like AMG is now a legitimate player in making track cars. Like 10 years ago, that wasn't an issue. No one took them too seriously. Corvette's now making mid-engine legitimate track cars. And again, it's now there's more fierce competition that you need to level up this car. So yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of leveling up, Genesis has won Motor Trend's SUV of the year with their brand new GV70. This is actually just right in line because I had the GV70 just last week, and it was a very enjoyable driving experience. Like the overall shape of the car, it's very pretty, it's very elegant, it has great power. The one that I had was the 3.5-liter twin turbo V6. I think it was like 370, 80 horsepower, something like that, just shy of 400. It's plenty quick. It does 0 to 60 in like 5 seconds or something like that. It's astonishingly quick. And like the best part about it was the pricing. We talked about a little bit of this off the air, because the GV70, you can get a base model that's under 59 or 50,000, 49,000 Canadian. And then the top trim, which is the one I got, was 75,000. Like, if you're thinking, oh wow, 75,000 is a lot of money, you're not wrong. But if you compare it to BMW BMW X3 M40 or the GLC 43, which is similar power, you're looking at 100K.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if you're looking at this comparing to the Germans, which is where Genesis is fighting, they're $20,000-$30,000 less than that.
Yeah, you can legitimately get, you're basically moving up a step, right? Because you can get a decently equipped GV70 for about 60K, which you can get a decently equipped, Q3 or X1 for that price. But you're definitely not getting into the same class for that kind of money. And even compared to an X1, that class of crossover, the GV70 is still a better value in terms of the feature content that you get. And not only that, it's more unique car and all this stuff. So it's really hard to fault this car. And so it's no wonder that it's SUV of the year.
Yeah. It's even like if you compare base trim to base trim, it has so many features, and the rates on them are actually fantastic. Lease rates and finance rates. What I actually really liked about it was the ability, like in Canada's for first 5 years, all scheduled maintenance is included, and they will come pick up your car. So you call up Genesis, be like, hey, there's a light that's on my dash that says service. It's like, oh, no problem, sir. Let me come and grab your car. I'll drop off something of yours or better for you while we service your vehicle. Because that's what they do. They come by. If you have a GV70, they're going to give you a GV70 or better. So like either drop off a GV70 or GV80 at your door, and well, take yours and then service it and then bring it back. That's their service. If you want to buy one, test drive one, you call them, they bring it to you. I mean, yes, you can bring it to a Genesis, or you can go to a Genesis dealer as well, but they don't really want you to do that. They want you to have that kind of white glove experience. I mean, kind of understand why, because most Genesis dealers are attached to a Hyundai dealer, and they probably don't want you to be on the same lineup as, you know, the guy that paid $20,000 for their Hyundai Accent. They want to give you a little bit better treatment. That's why they're including that.
Yeah, but another, 2022, there is another car to consider aside from the Germans, which is the NX hybrid.
Hmm.
And I just looked at the pricing and I'm like, that's actually pretty competitive.
Yeah.
So NX 350 hybrid, which is very similar to what my RAV4 hybrid has as far as drivetrain. It's not the prime version, which is the 450h, but the normal hybrid, not that fast, just regular commuter car, which will suit the needs for most people. That car with the ultra luxury package is also $60,000, which that to me is like, okay, that is a decent, that car is gonna hold its value really, really well.
I
If
think
you can get your hands on.
I think the biggest thing is like if you drive that, it'll feel like a Japanese car. Whereas if you drove the Genesis, it'll feel like a German car.
I get that, but I think the people that typically buy an X3 or GLC don't really care.
Actually, here's the thing. I talked to a few of my friends that recently purchased German vehicles in preparation for my Genesis GV70. They didn't want to. They didn't want to like see the car or anything like that, but they were interested when I told them that it felt German, because like a lot of them, the biggest test for them is when you close the door, does it feel solid? And when you turn the wheel, does it feel solid? And the GV70 has that solid German feel, whereas the Lexus, I haven't driven that one, but you know, haven't driven many Lexus in the past. It doesn't feel like that. It feels light. It feels airy. It's not like a bad thing, but it doesn't have that German quality to it.
But I think when you look back at the sales figures, the NX kind of speaks for
Oh,
itself.
the sales figures are great, but like what I'm saying is like it won't take it away from people who want to buy those German vehicles.
I
Like
don't know.
the people that are looking at X3 and whatnot, they'll keep buying those types of vehicles. I don't think people that's buying those for the way that a German vehicle feels would go towards an NX.
I feel like that's what BMW and Mercedes thought 10 years ago prior to the NX. Like, okay, there's the RX. The RX is a good value. The RX is a lot. The RX is doing the same thing. The RX is giving you a GLE or an X5 closer to an X5 size vehicle for the price of an X3. Now it's kind of in between, but prior to that, like in the 2000s, you're getting a similarly sized vehicle for the one size down price point.
Yeah.
And yeah, both these cars, just the market share is insane. The NX has only been out for one generation,
Yeah.
and the amount of market share. This is what I mean. It's like you're talking about a niche buyer that actually cares about driving dynamics, but 10 years ago when it was only Q5, X3, did Mercedes even have? I don't think Mercedes even had really anything here in North America to compete under the GLE.
No, they didn't.
GLK, sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
GLK.
yeah. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah. So at that point, everyone was like, okay, mid-size or small mid-size, I don't even know what you call it, luxury SUV. It was only that to choose from. And then suddenly NX comes around, they're like, oh, well, people looking for a German feeling car. Suddenly NX comes around, beats all of you guys, just slaps,
Yeah. And the
So
worst part
that's what I
is,
mean is that's what really matters. The sales speak for themselves. You're talking about a very small percentage of people that do care,
Mhm.
but the market tells us that most people don't care.
The worst part is the first gen NX. Like if you sat in the interior, you'd be like, huh, this feels absolutely horrible.
Oh, if you got a base model with a tiny screen and like the analog clock, the digital analog clock, like it was on the screen, but then it's like an analog style. Like, yeah, that one is not that great, but the fit and finish is still good on
Oh,
those.
fit and finish is
They do
great.
drive better than the RAV4. It is more refined,
It
a
was a little
lot more
heavier.
refined. Um,
Yeah.
you don't hear that 200 turbo either. So I don't know. For me, it will still be hard to pick the Genesis over an NX for $60,000 because I know I can get an NX that I would like, and especially the new one has been updated quite a bit.
Mhm.
And the new look is pretty solid too. Um, yeah, that you can get the ultra luxury NX hybrid for 60. I think
It's compelling.
it's compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Not wrong.
that is the only car I want to really point out if
Yeah.
we're talking SUV of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say so. I think the reason for this is the NX really wasn't fully out because you can't, but it's for
The showrooms have
2022.
none. They're still selling 2019 used ones because they cannot get any 2022s on the lot.
Speaking of brand new SUVs, next week we're going to hear about the brand new Range Rover that's supposed to be announced on the 26th. But like a Civ that Range Rovers are known for because they might rust a little bit. There's tons of leaks. There's so many leaks on the next generation Range Rover. The pictures here on Jalopnik, I mean, can you even tell it's a next gen Range Rover?
They just
Like
smoothed it out. They give it the same facelift that the Evoque got, that the kind of more Velar looking. It's just smoothed out.
it looks basically the same.
And then they slapped the rear end of the Cullinan on it,
The
which
Cullinan
unrelated car, but it's a very
Telluride.
yeah.
Yeah, the rear end is polarizing. Let's
Yeah.
say that. The door handles, they now pop out of the side of the body like the Velar has. Um, let's be honest, Range Rover has never been known for their electronics. When I had the Velar, the door handles sometimes wouldn't work. And, I'm sure they got better since then because that was, I think, 2 years ago now. But still, like, just so many electronics in there. Like, do you really want that in your kind of off-road SUV? But a Range Rover is no longer that, right? It's more like a luxury SUV. And looking at the interior photos, it looks really fancy. Has like a iPad swivel like screen that comes out. It looks good. Oh, and there's a potentially a third row option now because there's a photo of a woman sitting in what looks to be the third row of the new Range Rover.
Nice. Yeah. Third row seats never been Land Rover's kind of strong suit, but yeah, it makes sense that the full size range gets a third row option. That will make it compete more directly with the GLS and the X7. This will probably be priced a little bit higher than that.
Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Overall looks, I
I don't
think it
know.
looks good, but I also think the current Range Rover looks good.
Yeah, the
So, like,
current one is timeless. Like it's been around for almost a decade.
yeah,
And it's still well, this looks 99% the same, to
it
be
really
fair.
does. It really
Uh,
does.
but I like that they've kind of embraced the luxury side a bit because they have their hardcore off-road model, and you can basically choose, if you want to go off-road and you want luxury, you have a whole spectrum now of Rovers to choose from,
I don't
right?
I don't think they have a full spectrum though. Like even their most off-road friendly one is pretty luxurious.
Yes, but a lot more rugged with the plastics and the materials that they
Right.
choose. Um, if you really want, and that's the thing, is that they don't need before you had the choice of, okay, either a tractor or you get the full size range, right? So now that you've got a real option that will meet the luxury requirements for most people, then the Range Rover can go soft.
Right.
And then all the reviews are going to be taking this generation off road. I'm just going to predict it now. And they're going to, you think this generation has gone soft? And then they go do something like impressive off road, which really is not that impressive because like half the crap I can do in my RAV4 hybrid too. Yeah, but then some journalist is going to think, oh, this is everyone's talking about how this generation is gone soft. Yeah, I don't know. Journalists are very predictable.
The rear end of the Range Rover in this white looks really weird.
It's very pinched off, and it's just strange. Like it has that teardrop, from top down. It would be like very teardroppy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks.
it needs to be
odd.
boxier.
It looks really odd because the taillights is blacked out, and there's this blacked out piece that goes across the rear. It
it's
looks
like
Fu
Manchu.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it looks like a mustache or something.
Yeah.
It's super odd. But I guess we'll see it next week in full, and we'll be able to judge a little bit more and tell you more about the new Range Rover. But for this week, the biggest news is the brand new 2022 Civic Si.
Love it or hate it.
So we talked about the Civic last week and the week before. We talked about Civic a lot. The new Civic is more grown up. It's longer, it's wider, it's more comfortable, it's more luxurious, or maybe not luxurious. It has better materials than the old one.
It is more luxurious. Compared to 10th gen, yes.
Compared to, yeah. But it's not luxurious like overall. But yeah, so the Civic Si, the 10th gen, which is the last one, it had 205 horsepower and 192, I think, pound-feet of torque. The new one has the same amount of torque, so peak torque has the same, has 5 less horsepower, now at 200. So what they say is the power is more available than before. So it's more broad. So the torque range is broader. So you get the 192 from 1800 all the way to 5000, which is more than last gen. The flywheel is lighter, so it should be more responsive. They say it's 26% lighter than previous, which makes it 30% of a reduction with inertia. They talk about the torsion rigidity, which is increased by 8%. Bending rigidity is increased by 13%. It's a 1.4 inch longer wheelbase. It's the longest in its class. Spring rates has been increased 8% in the front, 54 in the rear.
Ooh.
That's a lot in the rear. Sway bars are 27 mil hollow in the front, 18 mil solid in the rear. And they use compliance bushings from the Civic Type R. There's bigger brakes as well compared to the regular models. So there's definitely a few upgrades from the regular model compared to the Si. From the EX or touring model, which we expected. But one thing that they left out is adaptive dampers. The 10th gen, when you put it into sport mode, it firms up the dampers and it was noticeable. But you don't get that with the 11th. They took it out.
Yes, I don't mind that. On the Type R, I do feel the difference between Comfort, Sport, and R, but I get that the Si is kind of the tuner model, right? And adaptive dampers always is an obstacle whenever you want to do coilovers, shocks, stuff like that. Because typical coilover entry level maybe 1,000 to 1,500 US for a respectable coilover, and then you have to slap an extra $400 module to cancel out the adaptive damper issue. And so maybe that's the thinking behind it. I think with a good tuned set of shocks, it will be fine without adaptive dampers. Like the Supra has adaptive damping. It feels exactly the same in both modes. Like it's a marginal at best increase, like 10, 15%.
Right.
And the thing that drove me nuts about the Type R is that you can't do an individual mode, so you can't do like
Right.
comfort shocks with aggressive throttle
Throttle mapping.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess the big thing with the 2022 SI that everyone is hung up about is the 200 horsepower number. I think everything else we love, and then we see the 200 horsepower, and then we're like,
That's it.
because 15 years ago we were at 197
Yeah.
horsepower, running a 0 to 60 time under 7 seconds, 6.7 high sixes. I think we're around the same here, if we're leaving it stock. So straight line speed is not going to be that impressive, even though the torque band is a lot broader than obviously an 8th gen or 9th gen Civic. People are upset about that it's not getting the power increase. But again, that's a tuner car. I think that's why the SI is the way it is you can do whatever you want to it. We'll let you, if you want to make this 300 horsepower, make it 300 horsepower. If you want to slap coilovers on it, slap coilovers on it. And then we're going to show you what we can do with our Type R.
With the Civic Type R, yeah.
Yeah. And some people are saying, okay, they're just keeping this slower because they need to leave room for the Integra. They got to keep the Integra exciting, because if the Integra only has 200 horsepower, then it's like, meh.
Then there's no point.
Yeah.
So like that's exactly what I was thinking, because like we know the Integra is coming out. We know the Integra is based off the Civic Si. We know that the Integra has a lot of the qualities of the Civic, because in all the leaks so far, the spy shots and everything that they have shown us, it's a Civic Si.
Hatchback.
Even we don't know if it's kind of hatchbacky or if it's sedan, because like in the illustration that they showed, it's a hatch, but it's longer. So like I'm thinking, did it use like the sedan type rear end, but they made it like a hatch? You know what I mean? So that it's like a more of a sportier line than the hatchback would be. It's hard to say. We don't know exactly what's going to be until it comes out, but we know that the shifter is exact same, because we're looking at this picture of this shifter versus the Integra leak, or not leak, the release of the 6-speed. It's the exact same shifter, right? So Honda, when they're making the Integra and they're making the Civic at the same time, because this is going to be exact same, they had to leave room for the Integra. I'm sure they could have made this with more power. We know that 1.5 can make more power. Like you guys at Overdrive, you guys did a tune for a client of yours, and it made like, was it 220 or something like that?
It's like plus 30 or plus 40 horse, like pretty easy.
Yeah.
On the regular 1.5s, yeah.
So yeah, we know that it can make more power, but Honda left that on the table because the Integra had to be better. That's what I think.
Well, and I think the SI, it's about being a tuner car, and it's about the feel, because they have to get. That's why they're doing stuff like giving it a different flywheel, and I'm sure that the engine tuning is a little bit different, where you trade off a little bit of that peak power for just being more fun to drive on a daily basis. If you want the track special, you get the Type R. But for a fun, respectable, practical sports sedan, I guess this is how they imagine the SI to be. And I think the SI always was this way. I think a lot of us don't remember the time anymore pre-Type R. That's what we grew up with as our sporty Civic.
You're thinking of the 2000 SIR, the EM ones?
Yeah, EM1, 8th gen, even the 9th gen, before the 10th gen. Now that we have the Type R, it's like, okay, not everything lives in the shadow of the Type R.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think EM1 SIR is like pants on fire compared to the regular,
sport model. It was
SI
just loud.
versus SIR.
It was just loud.
Yeah.
I
So
remember the VTEC crossover was
yeah,
loud.
I like what they've done here. But the elephant in the room is really the competition, right?
Right.
We talked about the WRX not too long ago. The WRX has a pretty upgraded interior as well. I like what they've done with the red accents on this interior. I think it just makes it look a lot more interesting. I
Mhm.
like the regular Civic interior too, but um, yeah, the WRX is kind of the elephant in the room because the WRX is cheap. Well, historically speaking, we don't know exactly what the new one's priced at, but you can always get one for about mid 30s Canadian.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of car for the money. Like it's a fun. I would still say that like you could get a 2021 WRX. It's still like a pretty good car for the money
Mhm.
for 35K. Uh, the full load is like 38, but you just get a sport. It's gonna be. I don't think they're gonna change it that much. I remember when the WRX was my dream car back in grade 4. It was 34 grand, and they've kept it there. So I don't see that changing much. But now we're getting an upgraded motor and all this stuff. Weird fender flares, but
Yeah.
as weird as a WRX is, it is such a performance bargain.
Yeah.
And out of the box, it's gonna have what 40% more power than this SI.
Oh, talking about
30 to 40%.
more power. So okay, so the Civic Si, the one of the biggest ones, of course, is the WRX. But with the WRX, with it being all-wheel drive, it's not like the the next comparable. I think the next comparable is that Jetta Gli.
Hmm.
And the GLI is priced lower than the Civic Si. It should be. And the Jetta GLI, I mean, if you're saying, oh, the Jetta's boring looking, the Civic is basically
They
there.
look the same.
They look very,
As we've
very
covered
similar.
before, they have the same rear three quarter.
They, they're
Yeah,
almost identical, right? And then the GLI gets you a more powerful 2-liter turbo engine as well.
yeah,
And that 2-liter turbo is also very, very friendly in the tuner scene. You can definitely make more power on that.
yeah,
And you can still get that with the 6-speed, and you can get a DSG, which is a huge
yeah.
advantage because it gets more people into that car, and it has that limited slip diff as well. Like
Yeah.
the GLI makes sense. It makes
Yeah,
so
the
much sense.
SI is very like you have to want that car. Like you're making a very informed and directed decision to get the SI. Now, I'm not saying it's the wrong decision because you hop into SI, you feel the clutch, you feel the shifter, and it's like you hop into GLI and it's like, oh, this is rubbery mush.
Yeah,
I once you drive it, you get it, but a lot of people will not get it. Um, with the SI.
and
I didn't understand a 10th gen SI because frankly I wanted the hatch only. Like I don't really care for the sedan and I really don't care for what the 10th gen coupe looked like.
yeah,
Uh, it's just a
you're
mess.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
Um, so yeah, sedan. I think that's where the Integra really plays in. I am more excited about the Integra, but seeing what they've done to the SI now, I like what that means for the Integra.
It,
Because if all these upgrades carry over to the Integra, but with a little bit more power,
yeah,
and a little bit nicer interior and exterior and a hatch, like damn, that is gonna be one compelling car.
but it's gonna be 40 grand.
It will be, but I think 40 grand is a fair price to ask for
$40,000 Civic.
something something like that.
I,
Yeah, I mean,
here's another car that some people might kind of throw into the ring. When you're talking about sporty cars, one of the biggest names is, of course, the GR86. GR86, yes, I know it's smaller. Yes, I know it's 2 doors, but GR86 has more power. It's been proven already with that chassis, that new motor. It's, well, the same price as well. So, like, there's not going to be that many people cross shopping the two, I don't think.
I think it's the age thing. Like if you're a potential dad, you can't even really look at the GR86. Like unless that's your second or third car,
Yeah.
the GR86 is out of the running.
If
Yeah.
you're dad of someone that's 4 years and older, the GR86 isn't that bad because you have forward-facing seats, which you can do in the GR86 comfortably. Rearward facing, you really can't. But I get what you mean. Speaking of dad and becoming an old man, my review of this week. Perfect segue. So just this week, I posted the review for the 2021 Mercedes E450, which is a class that only Mercedes makes.
Yeah.
There is nothing out there. BMW, Audi, nothing makes a mid-size convertible because no one really buys it. Let's be honest. This car was it's basically $100,000 as spec, but it is absolutely beautiful inside. Like, yes, I know it's not an S class, but this interior, like, just look at this beige on burl wood on black, or sorry, the blue interior. It's absolutely beautiful.
Very classy. It's like a yacht, you know. It's a very yachty car.
Yeah, like a little yachty.
Little yachty. Even the steering wheel is quite yachty. It's very nautical.
I enjoy this car quite a bit. I actually drove this up to Whistler. Fuel economy under 10 liters for 100 kilometers. Inline six with the EQ system was great on fuel. It was great on power. Like,
this is that new 9-speed, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that gearbox. Like,
yeah.
I drove on the highway, and then if you want to pass, it drops from 9 to like third gear so quickly.
Yeah, and just hustles.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's the first good Mercedes automatic in a long time. I don't know.
It's what I was surprised about was, so when I went up, it was raining a little, so I had the roof up. Super quiet. It's like, yes, it's a soft top, but it's like
so well
layered,
insulated.
quad layered.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like super heavy, thick. There's even like an LED dome light in the center, which I didn't expect because generally you wouldn't have anything in the middle. But like, it was so quiet going up. And then when I came back down from Whistler, I was like, well, this kind of nice. Let's give it a shot. So I had the top down, windows up, along with the kind of deflector that's in the front on the A-pillar, as well as the deflector that's in the rear. Quiet. Like, I had normal conversation with my wife while sitting inside a car. No problem whatsoever. It was so comfortable. Like, I absolutely love this car.
Oh, you never buy one. I think
no, I won't. No, it's not. It's not a vehicle that I would buy simply because it doesn't make sense in my life.
To me, the problem with it is the E-Class two-door just makes no sense to me. Like, they look cool, like they look a little bit nicer, a lot classier than the C-Class, but then just I don't really know what you're paying the extra 20,000 for to go up to this class. And I think I've had this feeling since the CLK. The CLK was always positioned a lot higher than the equivalent 3 Series Cabrio. All right. And especially when the 3 Series, when they came out with the hardtop convertible for a reasonable price, it was like, why is the CLK $20,000 more than that? I can't tell you where the money comes from. And then now that the new 4 Series convertible got that cool roof and everything, same size back seat. You're not really getting a roomier back seat with the E-Class
the back
than a
suck.
4 Series. The 4 Series convertible, at least the previous generation, kind of usable back seat. Your friend has one, right?
Yeah, it's just as usable as this. Like, I sat inside. I'm fully upright. It's like a 90-degree backrest.
Yes, the angle is awkward, but the legroom is actually like better
I was able to sit in the back of 511. But
better than a lot of three-row SUVs.
The third
the
row
Range
of
Rover.
three-row SUVs. Yeah.
So somehow
the E-Class, it's basically is $90,000. That's where it starts. C class, it's $60,000, so it's $30,000 more.
Yeah, like that
But
is.
but if you think about it this way, an S class is 174. It's a bargain when you're comparing to an S class.
Oh, but I don't know. The S is really nice. Like
But
the S is a bargain compared to Continental. That's the problem. We just keep raising the bar. Yeah.
it's like you don't get that. Like my neighbor saw it, right? So my neighbor's like, oh, I didn't know you were 60 years old. Like there's no getting away from it. It is an old man's car, especially in the color that I got, the silver with the blue. It's an old man's car, but it's it's such an elegant, beautiful dream of a vehicle. It rode so comfortably. I didn't want to give it back. That's how good it was.
I just can't get over Mercedes styling. Just I think they look fine, but it's just too repetitive.
Oh, the outside looks like any other car.
It looks like any other Mercedes. The
Yeah,
wheels look like any other Mercedes. Like
the,
I swear they've been using the wheel that your press car has for the last 10 years. Like
I'm sure they
that
have.
AMG style. It's just I don't know. To me,
But it wasn't about the exterior. It was about this amazing
the
interior.
top-down experience is
But Clarkson said this in one of his reviews when he did. I think he even drove in this or some other supercar that had a convertible. It doesn't matter when you have the top down. That experience alone, like, already blows you away. Like, you can be in a Miata and you can still have just an amazing experience because it is a convertible. But when the top was up, I didn't know it was a convertible. That was the part, because like in the 4 series, I knew it was a convertible because every single like road imperfection, the roof was like
Mhm.
shimmying and shaking, and I can hear the creaking from it. But this was silent, and I drove on some rough roads with the top up. It was silent. It was so good.
Yeah, I get that. I think, yeah, I just wish it just looked a bit more
Well,
$100,000. Like
you
if
can
I'm
get
paying, yeah,
you can get the E53 AMG then you get slightly more aggressive front and rear bumpers and quad exhaust tips out back.
yeah. My next door neighbor has the coupe of
Hmm.
this. I think maybe a year or two old, and I just don't understand the coupe. It's like I want I want the bigger version of the coupe because yeah, like compared to a C coupe, it looks the same. That's my obstacle with the coupe is that I can't even tell what the difference is uh, between those two cars. But one is 20 to 30,000 dollars more for
It's
yeah.
the front end, I can see it. The rear on the C class is definitely different than the E.
Yeah, it's a little bit pinched
Yeah.
compared to this one. Yeah, I don't know. Not my cup of tea.
Yeah. What's kind of weird as well is the E class. You can't get the 63 anymore. It's only available with the same inline six. The 450 as well as the 53 has the same inline six.
Hmm.
Um,
One is like the mild hybrid one.
no, they're both mild hybrid. It's
Oh,
just the 53 is tuned by AMG to make more power.
uh,
429 over 362. So yeah, but either way, it's not a vehicle that a lot of people are that interested in. But
yeah,
before
I'm
we,
curious what the sales figures are for them to even justify having a press car for it.
I yeah, they probably like, might as well. We have nothing else better at
Somehow
this time.
Mercedes can do this. They keep making like the niche cars that everyone has left the market,
Like the
and then they're like,
SLC.
"We're gonna keep making these." The SLC, the new SL, is it just an SL now?
I think so. Yeah. Well, there's a
Yeah,
new SL coming.
yeah. That the new one that looks like half decent compared to the old one. That
Well, the old one looked like they took the front end and rear end of a new Mercedes and just plop it onto the old SLs, because
yeah,
it doesn't flow with the middle portion of the car.
yeah.
But yeah, before we end this this webinar today. Not webinar. What am I talking about?
Webinar. Whoa.
We're learning.
Podcast.
We're this podcast today. Do we have any updates for people for our off-road vehicle?
Off-road rig. I think we looked at a few. One of the top contenders. Let's go through some of the top contenders and why they are there. But we're still open to other suggestions. We're not set on anything whatsoever at this point. But one of them I think is the Pilot. The first generation Pilot. You mentioned must have the towing package for the oil coolers, and I don't know. I think that car makes a lot of sense in terms of the value because they're cheap. Like even compared to a CRV, used Pilots are cheaper somehow. It's a very roomy car. So you can put a lot of stuff. You can camp in that, no problem. And it's a J series, so it is true to your roots.
I know how to modify it.
Yeah, I think yeah. So I like the look of the first gen Pilot too. It looks kind of more rugged as well, especially compared to a CRV of that same generation. So Pilot's up there because they're cheap. They're $4 to $5 grand, and you get a lot of car for the money. I feel like. Right. What else?
We were looking at a Volkswagen Touareg, the first
Touareg.
generation.
Yeah, Touareg first gen, preferably a 6-cylinder one.
V6, yeah.
Yeah, without air suspension. It's just one less thing to break. It's just, yeah, lower maintenance if possible. Those are tanks. Like they drive like a tank. Not that they're bulletproof in terms of reliability, but they're very nice to drive. Very over-engineered car, but you do get why that German engineering that and the Cayenne are kind of very definitive in that sense. The Q7 kind of poo-poo, I think. Right? Like,
yeah, I don't like the interior of the Q7.
Just has not aged very well.
As much as I like the Q7 for the extra size, so like camping it would be actually half decent, but like I just that interior, that MMI interface,
yeah,
does
especially
not
the first generation.
Yeah,
and the used car market has been very honest about that. The Q7 is not a cheap car brand new, but always Touaregs have been sold for higher used than Q7s. Like I don't remember a time in history when a Touareg was not worth more money.
Yeah, just as an example, there's like actually a bunch of actually might be the same ad, but there's a few of them that's like $6,000 for Q7s. But Touaregs, like they're about 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. Another contender is basically anything Jeep from the early 2000s. Somehow Jeep, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that Jeep, being the off-road brand, they have the most off-road capable vehicles. And like it's not even the ones that it's not just the Wrangler. Like the Grand Cherokee is like very capable for that class of vehicle. It's a very capable car. The Liberty, which was kind of a joke at the time, is also very capable. It's got proper off-road tech in there that you don't find in anything else of that price range or in that segment of that time, and they're also cheap. Grand Cherokee is not as cheap, but there are a lot of Liberties under $6,000. So a lot to choose from.
Early 2000 Grand Cherokees aren't too bad. And there's some like kind of shoddy looking ones that it's for sale for like $2-3 grand, which could work. But when we're talking about Jeep, we're also a little worried about just the reliability. Like we want to go out there and have fun, but we also want to come home. Yeah. And we know, of course, the 4-liter inline 6 of those are pretty indestructible.
Yeah. And the WJs, the WJs, which is that 99 to 04, 05-ish generation, solid front and rear axles. Like that is a very capable vehicle. But part of me thinks, okay, that is too capable. Because if we go out there and we mess around in a Wrangler 400, that is exactly not the point that we want to do. I feel like it
Mhm.
kind of is against our mission. Like we just want to build something that like is more civilian, but just show people, okay, this is you don't need two solid axles, you don't need limited slip differentials, and it's really hard to say no for the money because under $5,000 you can get that with a WJ generation Grand
Mhm.
Cherokee, but that kind of defeats the purpose. I think it's more to like, hey, let's all get out there, let's all have fun. We don't need to take kind of a more compromised vehicle with a big gas guzzling V8 to enjoy ourselves off road. With a little bit of time and effort, we can make anything somewhat fun and capable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else do we have on the list? Anything Suzuki?
Yeah, we were looking at Suzuki's like the Grand Vitaras, but Grand Vitaras are
Very
priced
expensive.
priced a lot higher than it really should. The only Suzuki that's within our price range is the XL7, which is
Yes.
compromised by its own way because it's longer. It's not really that comfortable. Like,
Very simple layout on those. I just had one in the shop 2 days ago. Put it up on a hoist. Like the car was just in for tires. I'm just like, I'm just gonna put it up and see what's going on underneath here. And I'm like, oh, this is a really simple car. Uh, yeah, it's very easy to work on that car. So
but
not.
the
Mhm.
I think what we found was the aftermarket support was quite limited on that. Like I found spacers for the suspension
But
from
a lot of
OMAD
people
Emu. That's it.
modify the sidekicks and the trackers, and aren't they basically the same?
But I just think it's the weight difference between the two. So
True.
like that might have a small effect on it. Other than that, we also looked at Jimmys and Blazers, but they're surprisingly expensive. For
They're also they're more expensive than Grand Cherokees, which is like, I
yeah,
don't think they're a better built car, nor are they more capable. So why are they more expensive? Because the
it's
Grand Cherokee has a nicer interior, more power, more capable.
it was only the newer versions, the Envoys and the Trailblazers, that's cheaper.
Mhm.
But
But those are so low to the ground.
exactly,
It's
those
kind of
are
concerning.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and then what else did we find? I think that's really it.
Highlander first generation.
Yeah, but
Surprisingly good clearance and big tires from factory. 29-inch tires. Uh, not too many out there.
Highlander for some like I mean it's a Toyota at the end of the day, and because people
Highlander slash RX 330. Somehow,
people know they're reliable, which means that they're priced high. Like the cheapest Highlander on Craigslist right now is $7,000.
I thought we had one like $4,500 or
We
so.
may have had one, but not
Oh,
anymore.
yeah. But yeah, those you can lift and put a pretty decent sized tire on, and pretty, that's a Camry motor. It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
Uh, a lot of X trails in our budget.
Yeah, but the X Trail is just I think it's a little small for what we're looking for. We're looking for something a little bit bigger than the X Trail. Same goes with like the Mitsubishi Outlander, the
Highlander.
first gen and second gen. It's just yeah. And of course the newer ones of the Outlander, they all had CVTs, which we really don't want for an off-road rig. CVTs just generally they don't work well.
Yeah,
I don't
it's the
mind
opposite of a low gear.
I don't mind a Pathfinder or an Xterra,
Hmm.
uh, but the Pathfinders that we're looking at, just they're all rotted out. They really are. And then the Xterra, I can't get the second gen. I don't really want the first one because the first one's quite weak. And then the second one had the transmission issues that plagued that generation as well. So yeah, we're still looking for suggestions. If you see anything on Craigslist, Auto Trader, whatever it may be, shoot me a message. Quite a few of you actually had sent me messages through Instagram. Certainly appreciate it. I got a few Honda Elements that was sent to me, and I was like, I really don't want an Element. The Element's gas tank, it's the lowest point of the car.
It has a little like 2-inch thick pipe wrapped around it, kind of.
It's not
Doesn't
two
protect you
inches.
against
It's like a
doesn't
quarter
protect
of an
against
inch.
rocks whatsoever. but you can zip tie like a flat piece of metal underneath it, and that will be something.
No, if it's going to be an element, that
Yeah.
gas tank's getting removed and getting put inside the cabin. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, but yeah, part of me still wants to stick with something very underdoggy, right? Like a Grand Vitara and Trackers. Like we know these are capable vehicles. We know anything Jeep is capable. It's it kind of I want to go more civilian, but I do want all-wheel drive in some capacity. It doesn't necessarily have to have a low range or locking center diff and stuff like that, but I do want all-wheel drive. But yeah,
Well, I guess that really concludes today's podcast.
yeah. Is
Anything
there
else?
any vehicle we are missing? Let us know, audience, and I guess we'll catch you next week.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.